Tonight, Toronto data shows just a small fraction of encampment residents have moved into permanent housing.
If we get to the end of the Novotel lease at the end of December this year and I haven't found housing again, then I've still got my tent.
We'll have details on the calls for more affordable housing and shelters in the city. Plus, communities across the country come together in healing drum circles for the spirits of Indigenous children who never got to go home. And
I hope they feel his humanity and his passion for music.
the life and career of Canadian jazz legend Oscar Peterson is the focus of a new documentary premiering at TIFF today. We'll take you to the red carpet.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk. It's a new chapter for one woman experiencing homelessness. Tomorrow, she'll move out of a Toronto encampment and into a new place. She's one of few encampment residents, though, to have made it into permanent housing. And advocates say without better alternatives, encampments will continue. CBC's Dahlia Ashry reports.
I move in actually tomorrow, so I'm very excited.
CBC has agreed to keep this woman's name confidential for safety reasons. She says she was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago, and after waiting on a Toronto public housing list for 8 years, she is now ready to be moving into her new place.
I was at Lamport Stadium, and then before that I was in a respite, and before that I worked, but I had gotten sick and I lost my job. And that's how I ended up homeless. It's been frustrating that it's taken this long, but I'm again just thankful for the people who've helped me.
The former chef is one of few people to make it into permanent housing. City data shows only 8% of Toronto encampment residents have moved into permanent housing since April of last year, when the city and police began forcibly evicting them from parks across the city.
We are focusing our efforts hugely on getting as much supportive housing actually built.
As for the woman we chatted with, she claims her name was bumped up on the waiting list thanks to her doctors and housing support programs.
You need your ID done, you need taxes, you need all these things, but I just feel like it just was at the right time. The Streets to Homes came along and they were able to help me out.
There are over 6,000 temporary shelter spaces for more than 8,000 people experiencing homelessness. That's according to the city's shelter data. Doug Johnson-Hatlam is a street pastor at Sanctuary Toronto. He believes more affordable housing and shelter needs to be built. That requires all levels of government to work together.
The share of that in Toronto would be, between 3,000 and 5,000 units a year need to be built of rent geared to income housing. That the city could be lobbying the other levels of government to participate in a three-way plan for building this kind of housing.
Some are still unsure what's next, like this man who goes by the name Gru. He used to live at the Trinity Bellwoods encampment site. Now he resides at the Novotel Hotel.
If we get to the end of the Novotel lease at the end of December this year and I haven't found housing again, then I've still got my tent. I've still got all of my survival gear for surviving another winter in Toronto.
As for this former chef, she will continue visiting her good friends at the encampment sites, but is also excited for a fresh new start at her new place.
So are you looking forward to a new place? Maybe you can whip up some dishes?
I know, I feel like I'm out of practice, but yes, I'm excited to start cooking for myself again.
Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
Indigenous communities united with drum circles across the country today, held against the backdrop of Indigenous children found in unmarked residential school graves. The event was held to bring the Canadians together to grow, learn, and heal. Dale Manuknuk has that story.
From St. John, New Brunswick to London, Ontario, Nanaimo, BC, to St. Catharines. Drums banging from coast to coast, amplifying both pain and hope.
We really need to think about redefining the heartbeat of this nation. And we can only do that together.
The event is new to Celebration of Nations, a project that began in 2016 to promote diverse Indigenous cultures. traditional call and response style of song was featured, where there's a call in the song followed by an answer from additional participants.
We had to come together and pray. We had to sing, we had to dance, we had to drum, because those are all medicines.
Healing was the theme as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people deal with the painful truth of Canada's history after the unmarked graves of more than 200 children were found in Kamloops.
We were stuck in isolation and we had no choice but to think for ourselves and be like, whoa, I actually have to feel what I'm feeling.
Canada has to own up to it. They have to own up to what they did to my people.
The 215 graves found began a series of discoveries of hundreds more across the country.
Those are bodies being found. We got to remember, it's not even the ones who were incinerated, the ones who were put in ovens and burned, and those are the ones that you can't even count because they were just ashes.
Many leaders spoke at the various drum circles, sharing a message to those in attendance and watching online. Alexis Isaacs made sure that her own people came away with something too.
You have always been good enough, no matter what anybody has ever said. You are the best.
Dale Monukduk, CBC News, St. Catharines.
The International Muslim Organization held a press conference today at a mosque in Toronto's West End to mark the one-year anniversary of the killing of 58-year-old Mohammed Aslim Zafis. Zafis was a caretaker volunteer at the mosque who was fatally stabbed as he sat by the door of the mosque making sure people were following COVID-19 guidelines. Today, members of the community gathered to remember Zafis. His daughter spoke about how painful this year has been without her father.
He was the father that I always had, and I will never have him again because it got taken away so fast, so soon. I'm afraid to go to mosque, to wear a hijab, to go out there, to say, well, I'm not the next victim, but sometimes I feel I am. I just want the hate crime to stop and let it don't happen to no family like what happened to me and the one in London.
The community also remembered Zafis as someone who was committed to giving back and diligently delivered food hampers to those who needed it most. To continue his legacy, the International Muslim Organization and Islamic Relief Canada announced a new initiative. It's called Feed Hunger Over Hate and will distribute food donations to people in need across the country. Today, Ontario is reporting 784 new cases of COVID-19. Out of the new cases reported, 602 are in individuals who have either not been fully vaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. Nearly 85% of eligible Ontarians have now had at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. The Registered Nurses Association of Ontario and the Ontario Medical Association are speaking out against protests at hospitals and health facilities. In a joint statement released tonight, they say anti-COVID-19 vaccine protests make it difficult for patients to get the timely care they need. Both organizations are calling for safe zones around hospitals and other health settings. Now, this comes on the heels of similar statements, including from Toronto Mayor John Tory and Health Minister Christine Elliott, condemning these types of protests. Earlier today, the Premier weighed in on social media. Doug Ford says the protests we're seeing outside of hospitals are selfish, cowardly, and reckless. Our healthcare workers have sacrificed so much to keep us all safe during this pandemic. They don't deserve this kind of treatment. Not now, not ever. Leave our healthcare workers alone. It is believed more protests are planned for tomorrow. Justin Trudeau faced more questions today about the SNC-Lavalin scandal and excerpts from Jody Wilson-Raybould's upcoming memoir, saying he left her with the impression he wanted her to lie about it. Trudeau is denying the accusation, and today he said the scandal has been examined thoroughly.
We have seen parliamentary committees, we've seen publications, we've seen testimony, we've seen investigative reporting that has dissected this in every different possible way. We've seen clerks of the Privy Council testify to how government works. This is something that has been discussed amply, including thoroughly before the last election.
The scandal ignited with Wilson Raybould's 2019 resignation from cabinet and her accusation that as Attorney General, she'd been pressured by Trudeau to grant SNC-Lavalin a deferred prosecution agreement. The NDP has put some price tags on its major promises. Today, leader Jagmeet Singh defended his plan to tax rich Canadians and corporations as a way to steer cash to those who need it. David Thurton has more on that.
On this Toronto University campus, student debt is top of mind for many.
I think that's definitely a good topic that needs to be advocated for a lot more.
The NDP is promising billions of dollars to lighten their load. These students say the need is huge.
I hear a lot of people in first year and second year, and even people who graduated, talk about it and their struggles with it.
The NDP's costed plan calls for some $250 billion in new spending. There's $68 billion for universal pharmacare, dental care, and mental health coverage, $30 billion for Indigenous communities, including for clean drinking water and compensating First Nations children and their families, as ordered by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, and nearly $4.2 billion for eliminating some student debt and interest payments. Historic spending, the NDP says, paid for by a new wealth tax and boosting the corporate income tax rate.
We're going to make sure that the super wealthy pay their fair share.
The party says that would shrink its projected deficit from $145 billion this year to nearly $34 billion within 5 years.
We're fighting for you. We're going to make sure that you are put first.
A former budget watchdog says the NDP plan still lacks details and not every item is independently costed.
The number of their spending programs actually over time very likely are going to cost significantly more.
And the Liberal leader says Canadians need economic growth, not just higher taxes.
The idea that you can go with unlimited zeal against the successful and wealthy in this country to pay for everything else is an idea that reaches its limits at one point.
The Liberal and NDP platforms promise a lot of the same things, but Singh says his tax plan sets him apart from a party he says favors the rich. David Thurton, CBC News, Thunder Bay, Ontario.
Erin O'Toole made a new policy announcement today, promising to boost financial support for parents who are grieving the loss of a child. It includes changes to employment insurance benefits.
Currently, EI parental leave benefits end immediately following the death of an infant. We will reform this so that parents who lose a child aren't abruptly cut off from their maternity and parental leave benefits.
O'Toole's plan also includes 8 weeks of paid leave following a child's death. The City of Toronto is looking for feedback on its Cafe TO program. The temporary program for expanded outdoor dining was implemented to provide pandemic relief for restaurants and bars facing indoor dining restrictions. Now the city is looking to reevaluate. It's conducting a survey asking what people liked and didn't like about it. They want a better sense of how to support the restaurant industry while accounting for the use of public sidewalks and expanded patios on private property. Sophia joins us now. It sounds like patio weather is in store for this coming week.
Not in the real short term with some severe storms moving across the province right now, but there will be some really nice breaks this week. But eyes to the sky, we are heading into another active pattern. I've been watching severe thunderstorm warnings move eastward at a really fast clip across the province over the past couple hours. Really fast moving cold front. I'm talking about highway speed winds, 80, 90, 100-kilometer-hour winds. Reports of quarter-size hail, London, Kitchener, Hamilton. You've been all into the storms over the past couple hours, and a ton of lightning. We can do a scan on some of our systems at how many lightning strikes are happening per minute, and at one point there were over 1,800 lightning strikes a minute in these storms tonight. They will continue into the overnight hours. Bit of a soaker for some of you as well. Special weather statement in place for some of the rain. You will dry out throughout Monday morning and afternoon. Enjoy it while you can, because the storm risk for an active first half of the week continues. I'll tell you about that in the long range and when you can find the time. Patios, yes.
Okay. Thanks. We'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, Sophia. The Toronto International Film Festival, another day of excitement and red carpets. One of the films premiering today was a documentary that honors the life and career of a Canadian jazz legend. CBC's Tashana Reid has more.
I'm at the premiere of Oscar Peterson in Black and White. Now, not only does this documentary delve into the Canadian jazz pianist's 7-decade career, but it brings together the world's biggest musicians to not only perform his work, but to celebrate his life and legacy.
It's exciting. It's really wonderful to see that. I mean, it's very emotional also.
The late Oscar Peterson's wife, who served as a consulting producer on the project, described what it was like to see her husband's life story on the big screen.
I hope they feel his humanity and his passion for music, his passion for life, his exuberance for what he did, the joy he took in performing, and also his absolute dedication to human rights.
The documentary delves into Peterson's humble beginnings, growing up in Montreal in a family of musicians, and his ascent to becoming a jazz prodigy and musical genius. It features never-before-seen interviews with Peterson and concert footage. It also explores his rise to international fame, touring with his jazz trio and performing with some of the biggest names in music, such as Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Nat King Cole. Part of the documentary sheds light on Peterson's experiences with racism and segregation while touring in the United States. Those experiences inspiring one of his most famous compositions, Hymn to Freedom. For many Canadian musicians, Oscar Peterson's life has been an inspiration.
He is a mentor and will continue to be a mentor to so many of us around the world, not just Canada, around the world. Like always, he's been in my life, you know, as that idol, as that mentor, as that somebody to look to.
And he has left a legacy behind that has inspired both Jackie and me and countless others. We just happen to be the ones who get to be featured on the documentary, but there's a legacy of Oscar Peterson worldwide that we're just shining a tiny light on.
And before the documentary screening, the audience here was treated to a special performance by Canadian musicians honoring Oscar Peterson's work. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
Good vibes at the Honks for Hope Drive-In Hug concert in Toronto this afternoon. Families from across the GTA gathered in the north end of the city to fundraise for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Hugs are normally part of the fundraising campaign, but due to the pandemic, a car parade and physically distanced drive-in concert was planned instead. The charity that organized the event was inspired by a parent who lost her young daughter, who was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2000.
To be able to bring the families and our communities together again today in our drive-in hug really is a great gift.
The charity is also celebrating its 20th anniversary this year by giving back to local artists. Toronto's Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo and his two sons, Devin Cuddy and Sam Pauly, headlined the event. Proceeds are going to the Arthur and Sonia Labatt Brain Tumor Research Center. Great cause. Well, two artists are bringing color to the Toronto Eastern beaches this month by painting murals on the historic Ludi Boathouse. A group of local women came up with the idea. We caught up with some of them to talk about the message they hope to send through their art.
Color for me has been an amazing medicine for my own healing. Color has been known to have an impact on human emotion and in just overall mood and mental health. That's pretty much the focus of my work. All about using color to make people feel better, especially right now.
This boathouse definitely serves a beloved purpose and role as a place for community to gather, but it hasn't received a lot of love in terms of its aesthetic for so many years. We decided it was really time to rebrand the Ludi Boathouse interior and bring it up to date, just make it feel a little bit more 21st century, and commission fabulous celebrated artists to do their work here.
I think it's going to bring a lot of color and more community to the beaches, and just make it that much more inviting and loving, and just a beautiful place to be. I think this will transform also how the space is used.
My work is about advocacy and bringing awareness and almost having a conversation about mental health, which sometimes can be, there's a stigma about mental health, and it's so important to talk about it. I want people to feel inspired in the presence and vibrancy of color. I really just hope that it just brings good feelings to everybody.
So anyone walking along the boardwalk, Sophia, in the beaches can take a little detour to that boathouse to take in some of that art.
It's wonderful. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Totally.
Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous. Very talented people out there. Hopefully they're staying safe indoors right now, especially if you're in the western edge of the GTA. We are waiting for some of these storms to wean into the pre-dawn hours. You will clear into Monday, maybe a few stray showers, but it's really the soaking rain that's going to be coming into the overnight tonight, into tomorrow. 30 to 50 millimeters more for some of you that did see some storms roll through. And enjoy a lack of humidity for a morning school drop-off. And at the bus stop, it will be quite nice. The clouds will begin to clear into the afternoon, and that's when that humidity will continue to build in just a little bit, though. Monday's probably the better day out of the next 36 to 48 hours, as we're locked into another active storm pattern, especially for Tuesday. I'll get to that in a second. Here's what's going on. The backstory is there's a ton of humidity surging northwards, bearing down from the top. A lot of cold, high pressure. They will do battle, and we will be right in the middle in the crosshairs. Slight storm risk for southwestern Ontario Monday afternoon and evening, but then watch Tuesday afternoon. The really high potency reds move into your screen there. The potential is there for rotating storms even, and more severe storms across some of the areas that actually saw tornadoes last Tuesday, so just 7 days after that. We'll be watching out for that across a wide swath of southern Ontario on Tuesday. And then as you head into the rest of your work week, for the second half of your week, there are more chances of sunshine and a bit of a warming trend, but we're not out of the woods when it comes to humidity yet, Maribel. Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, we're talking about humidity that feels into the low to mid 30s.
Well, we are used to that from the summer.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sophia.
Might as well keep a good thing going.
Yeah, right. Even though it's September. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Have a great night, everyone.